guys, Gilly Hunt here with a little vellum window card. I highlighted this on my recent A to Z of Stampin' Up products when I was in fact doing H for hide and peek, and I suggested that one of the lovely things you can do with vellum is you can hide areas and then allow something else to peek out, and these little birds peek out through the window of the vellum. And isn't that a little pretty card? I'm going to make something very similar and show you how. I'm just going to finish it a tiny bit differently just for a bit of variation. So this is what you need. First of all, you're going to need a piece of vellum, and in fact you're going to need 2 pieces of vellum, which are cut 3 inches by 4.5 inches, and then scored. Oh, and I didn't put where it's scored, so shall I just write that on as we're talking? So it's scored at 3/4 of an inch on both sides. So what we end up with, here's the score mark, and here's the score mark, 3/4 in, 3/4 in, which gives me a middle section which will be 3 inches by 3 inches square. Okay, and then we're going to have the card base, which is cut at 7 inches along by 3.5, and we're going to score that in half, which makes us a 3.5 inch square, which is just a little bit bigger than our vellum. So the vellum will sit, once it's folded round, nice and neatly inside our pink card. Okay, and then we're going to need some lovely papers, and I'm going to use the rest of, I've cut these papers to pieces. I absolutely adore these Bird Ballard papers, and I'm just looking around trying to find which bird I want, because it's quite a busy paper. And the last lot I chose these little green and blue birds, and I chose a little pair, so I have the option of another 3 there, or a little singleton here. And I wanted to keep that little colour theory, so I'm going to go for this little bird here. And the problem now is, how do I know where to cut to get the right piece of paper? Now, some of you might be experienced crafters and you might just chop away and make yourself a rough square bigger than 3 by 3 and then whittle it down to a 3 by 3 square, which is fine. But for those of you that are a little bit more nervous about getting it right, or that are beginners, what I'm going to suggest you do is you make yourself a little mask. So let's just bring this in. So what I've done is cut from a piece of the vellum, I've cut in with the punch. Let me show you. Oops. I've punched out the 2 inch with the 2 inch punch, which is the punch we're going to use for the window. I've cut out the circle, and then what I did was I folded it in half so that this all matches, and made a little mark like that. And then I've gone to the other side and I've done the same again and made a couple of little notches. Okay, now what then happens is I've got roughly, they're not quite square, but they're square enough for what we want. What I've then done is I've used my ruler, and because we want 3 inches across, I know that this is a 2 inch punch, so we will have half an inch there and half an inch there to make our 3 inch square. So using a nice dark marker, I've done half an inch to there and half an inch to there, and I've done the same on that side. Okay, and now I'm just going to put it underneath the trimmer, and I'm going to make sure I pop that little mark and cut. And I'm going to make sure the little mark is over the cutting channel. I'm going to do the same on this one. I'm turning it round once again, making sure that mark is on the cut line. Now we don't have to be absolutely to the millimetre. We're just using this as a little mask, okay? And this is a really useful little mask because now I can say, do I really want that one? Which the answer is yes, I do. But I could then just move it around and go, oh, actually, that's quite nice. Oh, I could get those two in. I didn't realise they would still be in that circle. So I can use this now to choose my area. But I've now chosen my area. I want to make sure that I don't get this little yellow bottom sticking into my circle. So I need to move it down a bit to make sure it's in here. And I don't want him to come popping in either. And I'd quite like to bring it down a little bit so that I get this lovely flower at the bottom. So that's where I want it to be. And now what I'm going to do, again with quite a dark marker pen, I'm going to mark outside of this line, and I'm going to go quite a distance outside of the line because I want to give myself a bit of leeway. Oops. Okay, so I'm just drawing round. I'm trying to leave roughly the same amount either side, but that's just a little extra, I suppose, a bit like a seam allowance, I suppose. Okay, so I've now got what I want, and I'm going to rough cut that because I don't want to trim this yet, because I might want to use, maybe, for example, I might want to use this little bird here for something else, just his face popping out of something. And if I've trimmed it, I might lose that. So I've done a rough cut, and I know this is now too big. So now I'm going to bring in my trimmer, and I'm going to now make a little bit of a fuss. So I'm first of all going to make a straight line to work from. Okay, and now I'm going to just move this around as you would to make sure you get one straight line, another straight line. This gives me my 90-degree angle, and now I'm going to turn it 90 degrees again, and this time I'm going to line it up with the 3-inch mark because that's where we need the 3-inch to be. Okay, so I now know it's 3 inches across, and I'm going to start again, and I'm going to line this up with a 3-inch mark, and I now know that I've got a 3 by 3 inch square. Okay, let's take that out of the way. Now let me bring back my piece of vellum. So I've now got my card, I've got my base, so this is going to be on the back. Okay. Oh, please excuse me, I am still coughing. I do wonder if I've had this virus some time ago, because every single video I've had this funny little cough on it. So my apologies. So again, we've scored the sides. So now if I get a ruler, and I'm just going to do this on one of them, not both, and I'm going to put it at the corner to corner, and then I'm going to just bring it in a teeny touch, but an equal amount on both sides, because this is almost just, it's 4 and a 16th or so. So I'm now going to say that at the 2-inch point, I know that's going to be the centre. So I'm going to mark a little centre, and I'm going to do the same on this side. I know it's roughly 4, so I'm going to just bring it in a tiny bit and a tiny bit from those, and I know that if I do that, that cross is going to be 2 inches in. Okay, now why do I need to know where the centre is? Well, this is why, because we're now going to put them together and we're going to punch them out. Now, the problem being that if I put them together straight away without sticking them together, what might happen when the punch happens, that it might just slip and slide a bit. So on the bottom one, I'm just going to put a couple of pieces of tear tape. Okay, we won't see these because they'll be tucked in behind the bird once it gets going. But this will mean now that I can make sure that these are perfectly lined together. Okay, that just means that those two pieces of vellum are going to stick together and work together as one sheet now, from now onwards. So I'm going to bring in my 2-inch circle punch, And of course you could, if you've got dies or other shapes, you can cut any other shapes. And now by eye, I'm going to place that in the centre. If you are Mrs. Absolutely want to be precise, you could, if you really, really wanted to, you could measure even from the sides of your punch. But I think by eye is perfectly fine at this occasion. Okay, so I've now got a little wrap that I can wrap around my bird. Okay, and I've just realised that because I've probably scored it slightly differently, that actually I want to cut it down a tiny bit. And this may well happen to you, because look, that's just going to bow a tiny bit. Okay, so I'm just going to take a tiny little slice off, and I always think it's good for you to see this. Because it's important that you don't get panicked and go, oh no, it's not worked. So I noticed that there was a little bit at the bottom showing, and there was a little bit at the side bulging. So I'm just going to cut a little piece off the bottom and a little extra piece off the side. Okay, and that way that's going to fit in much more attractively, much better. Okay, so what I'm now going to do is I'm going to stick this down. Now obviously, because we're working with vellum, we don't want the fixings to show. So everything's got to be done on the back of this paper, because we do not want this to show. Okay, and I've got to do one other thing before I stick this down. So just holding it carefully, I'm going to cut off to the corner. Okay, from that corner where it was scored, inwards. From the corner, inwards. I don't have to do it holding this in place, but okay, from the corner, inwards. Why am I doing that? Because a bit like when you're making a box or any other thing, you don't really want that little edge to be showing. You want a nice crisp corner. Okay, so let's get that stuck down. So holding that in place, I'm now going to take that off and fold this in. Okay, I'm going to take that off and fold this in. Okay. Now, what we're wanting to do now is to actually attach the vellum. Sorry, I just whizzed off camera there for a minute without realising. So we need to then stick this onto your card, and for that I'm going to use tear tape and glue, because the vellum is going to want to just slightly push your cardstock out of the way. So I'm going to use a little square of tear tape, and I'm going to do my usual little trick of just lifting the two corner pieces like that and folding them backwards, and the opposite two corner pieces, folding them backwards, which will allow me in a moment to be able to put this down without it suddenly sticking and hanging on. It'll give me a little bit of movement, see? It doesn't simply grab. If all of those were exposed, it would grab like mad, and I might end up with it all wonky. So I'm going to do it like that, and then I'm also going to add just a tiny bit of extra glue, and I want some of the glue to be on the vellum so that we make sure the vellum is doubly secured. And I want some to be in the centre so that the centre of the card is doubly secured. Does that make sense? Okay, and we're now going to just move that around until it's in place. And I'm going to do what I normally do, which is just pull, which allows that to stick down. I'm going to pull that one, which allows that side to stick down. That one, which allows that to stick down. And that one, which allows me to push that one down, and I give it a push in the middle so that all the glue sticks as well. And there we have our basic little card with our highlighted little bird. And all I'm going to do to finish him off, I've just made a little bow using some linen thread. I'm just going to put a few little dibs of glue on the back I'm going to hold that in place and count to about 10 because that's usually what it takes for the bow to just hold down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I had a little bit of time chatting, so that should be well stuck. And then I'm going to play around, but I think I'm going to use this one. I have some pearls, some basic pearls, which I've already coloured for another project and I had left over because I didn't use as many as I thought. So I'm going to just take one of these, which is coloured with Granny Apple Green, and I'm going to just put a little tiny dip of glue. Even though these are sticky back, I like to just add a tiny dot of glue to help that sticky back to totally stick in place. Okay, let's just get it in the right place though, and that will just tidy up that little bow. So there we go, there's one, and there's one. This one I added some linen thread and some sequins, a scattering of little sequins to make it rather sparkly. I also set it slightly to the left instead of completely centrally because I wanted this bow to be a little bit more of a feature, so it just highlights that bow. But this one I've centred and I've added this little green bow. So I hope you like those two little birdies. Thanks very much. Bye bye.